Welcome to the Get OnPoint Business Podcast, where I talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and business owners to explore their journeys, lessons, and insights, as well as uncover the stories behind the successes and challenges of building a business. I'm Jason Mundy, a Focal Point certified business and executive coach, operating advisor, as well as a fractional chief marketing officer. And I'm the founder and president of OnPoint Business Advisors. Today, I'm excited to welcome a great guest, Mike Dwyer, founder of Emplana. Based at Cambridge Innovation Center in Boston, Massachusetts, Emplana specializes in helping high-achieving professionals navigate shifting workplace dynamics, advancing technology, and the aftershocks of corporate restructuring. After a long career in private and public sectors, consulting stints with Ernst & Young and Deloitte Consulting, and a master's degree in management from Salve Regina University in my great state of Rhode Island, Mike and a select group of advisors developed Emplana, the career pathway. So Mike, thanks for being my guest and welcome to the show. Let's just dive in.
I am delighted, Jason. Thank you.
Excellent. So first of all, tell us a bit about you and your background. So you've got a long, successful career in the corporate world. What inspired you to start Emplana? And what was your inspiration or key moment of spark of innovation to start the organization?
Well, let me keep the intro extremely brief because that's a good thing to do always, right? A long career. Started in the tech sector, 128 belt. I can't tell you how many times I had an address at Wellesley Office Park. And then off to Bermuda for 10 years in the 90s, finished that master's degree so I could talk to people like you, because coming out of the tech sector, I didn't speak accounting, marketing, organizational behavior, law, and that's exactly what that degree did for me. And I'll tell you, I was remarking on being offshore at one point, and somebody, I guess, wanted me to prove my international chops. And so I explained to them, well, it was easy. When I get to work at 6:45 in Bermuda, first I call Zurich because it's almost lunchtime there. Then you move to London and Dublin. Then you go local, and then you catch up with New York. So, that stuff gets in your bloodstream. And I think the more you understand about business, the more you can work with people like yourselves, collaborate. And there is a very specific event that triggered this company. I was looking at a friend's resume, and I'm sure that happens to you all the time, Jason, right? Hey, look at my resume. And the normal thing is emphasize this, wording, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But something new and different happened that day. Maybe it's because the person used to be a client and I felt comfortable. I found myself saying, this was a later in career middle manager. I found myself saying, geez, should you be stretching for one last executive job? Should you consolidate as a line professional? Then I'm looking through and I'm thinking, if you had this or that skill, you could actually kind of shift a little into something interesting. And that right there, as soon as you're asking those questions and thinking those thoughts in a collaborative way, that's Emplana career.
Awesome. So that's a great story. I love the spark that created that moment. And so from there, how did you start the company? Like, how'd you go about doing that? Like, and where are you today?
Well, first I come out of, because I've been in big consulting firms, the first thing you do is develop a framework. I mean, I can't go at any work without saying to myself, okay, how do you assess where the person or the organization or whatever it is, where are they at? How do you assess? So I did all that stuff. Then, I don't know, circa 2018, I got tenant space at a wonderful co-working space full of interesting companies. I hired a couple of grad students, and I believe in bi-directional mentoring. I've been taught that term by a friend in the tech industry, and I could show these MBAs that were my grad students, the interns. I could show them a lot, but boy, I learned from their thought process, their habits, their marketing instincts. So I was really off to a good start. And I'm telling you, the week before COVID started, we had lined up a seminar at Suffolk University that we were going to get a couple of faculty, a couple of staffers, and a couple of grad students, and run them through our seminar. And the next week, CIC closed, Suffolk closed, and off we go. So, but that's really the genesis, the background. And, by then there was an entity, and I had a couple of grad students and a little bit of momentum and a thought process.
Got it. That's awesome. So I think the mission that you have to help people with corporate restructuring and shifting technology and the dynamic work culture that we're in today, so particularly right now, right? The economy has been uncertain, although looks very strong right now, but unpredictable. And then the advancements of AI, like the type of service that you're providing, is probably more relevant than any other time that I can think of.
Well, I'd like to think so. And, we'll get as we go along here. I see you have some very interesting, I know I've seen some of your other podcasts and explore how people decide whether to go all in on the new thing or how to go about it. For me, going kind of incremental and side gig has been the right move. And part of that is because I'm doing with my day job, so to speak, cloud computing, cybersecurity, a little bit of AI, and that really helps. When you're working with people, you can, you're finding about what's wonderful about them, sifting for those nuggets of past experience or something that they when they think about it, they realize, actually I was pretty good at that. You're looking for those things, but you're trying to marry that with what's emerging. And so, being familiar with Fiverr and Upwork, emerging skills, that's really important, I think, to the work.
Sure, absolutely. And who is primarily your clientele for Emplana? Is there a certain demographic, or is it
we're focusing on seniors now, Jason. I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
Okay.
It's funny thing. Somebody, I mentioned bi-directional mentoring. Someone in my circle pressed me to understand clients. This is like 5 years ago. And it was actually pretty interesting. People come to you maybe age 30. They come to you after about 10 years of experience. They come to you at about age 45 to 50 and say, wow, I used to make more money in financial services. Things are changing. What do I do? And they come to you in the golden chapter. I want to do something before I retire, or I've decided I'm not going to stay retired. And as you know, Steve Dubin, we're really focusing on seniors. And I think that gives me a double advantage because all the things that I ticked off about having that day career, that consultancy, where I'm working with clients, working with their tech and business problems, really helps me. And, I think I can help anyone, but in particular, I think I can be a quick guide to a senior on where you need to brush up, compare your past work culture experience.
Absolutely. I think that's an incredibly important group to focus in on. People who are in later stages of their career, perhaps in that, the last mile, they still want to contribute. They have so much to offer. There's so much experience and so much knowledge that they bring. And in, certain industries, and particularly in tech, there's such an emphasis, placed on the younger generations, right? They're more tech savvy, or they might have more energy. They're going to work harder hours, and they're certainly cheaper. But there really is something to be said about experience, maturity, right, and knowledge that this older workforce, right, can bring to an organization.
Absolutely. And I am such an advocate of blending technology and people, age groups, experience. I love all these bright young people around me at the co-working space, but there's also plenty of gray hairs. And what that knowledge and experience you described can do is talk about what it was like to roll out something across the globe. Even if it was a while ago, those lessons remain, even if they morph to social media or whatever. You need the young, fresh skills, especially for social media, some of the tech and development things. And yet, the experience of how the world works and what you're going to have to tell the regulators and all that doesn't go away.
That's right. And that's what diversity is all about, right? So it's diversity of experience, diversity of thought, right? Diversity of skill set, and bringing multiple generations together just adds that much more value to an organization.
Well, it's funny. I tell a story about a dear friend, and it's a really important career story because in a past life, um, I reported to him, and then 3 or 4 moves down the game board, he reported to me, and both were comfortable and appropriate. And I love that story because he's a deep technologist, master's in computer science. And if it's more architectural, I want him to lead. But if it's more commercial, come on, I know how to put up with all that. And that's actually a good story to be calm about looking at what you bring, how you're going to fit in, and managing your ego. And make sure there isn't, I tell some of my seniors now, no war stories. Use your experience to understand what questions to ask, not to harangue anybody. Maybe that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So how long has Implana been in existence?
Well, I formed the company in 2018, and and then, like I say, COVID,
Right.
you know, just kind of undid everything. As you can be Acme Laundry in a town or city and not have to worry about trademark, domain collisions, or any of that. But as we pivoted to online, turns out the domain I bought was called CareerWorks, and I had checked it was free and everything else. But when we went back to do a trademark search and paid the lawyers, turns out there's a CareerWorks with a $sign at the end that's a nonprofit out in the West Coast. Oh boy. And what's funny is even that, like, that's a mistake. But usually a domain is a reasonable proxy for a trademark and vice versa.
Mhm.
But I got myself bent out of shape, and the lawyer said, Mike, I've seen 50,000 units at Amazon and then find a trademark problem. You don't have a problem. So we all have to take these things in stride. So I did some quick regrouping there. Um, and then, it was kind of a laughable process. I mean, I literally bought a Latin English dictionary, and I was just trying to think of a name for this thing. And somewhere along the line, I was working on empowerment and employment and planning, and Emplana was free. And I said, yay. So now I finally can have something that, costs $20 for the domain and is now trademarked.
There you go. That's awesome. And so explain what the Implana name means. Is it an actual term or a word in the
Um,
English language,
it,
or is
it,
it something that you created?
it's something I created, but it came
Right.
from thinking about what are we trying to do here? We're trying to empower people.
Mhm.
One of those brilliant grad students I had talked about democratizing executive coaching, and that's potentially something this business could do.
Mhm.
Um, and I like that thought a lot. And so empowerment, employment, and planning. How do you get ready? How do you prepare? What should I do? I love it. Right? Masters in management.
Mhm. Awesome. I love it. Excellent. So you talked about the trade, the name, the original name, and running into a trademark issue with that. But what were some of the early challenges you faced in building or growing the business?
Well, it turns out after a few years, COVID, ignoring the COVID experience, things weren't going as fast as I wanted. So I commissioned a marketing strategy. I mean, Jason, I could have hired you actually, but I got a very brilliant group, and they did some focus groups, and it was actually shocking what they found. Um, if you want to get in shape, the focus group said everybody's cool with hiring a trainer. But if you're going to do your career or job search, you should figure it out solo. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think it's the one time you should be collaborating more than ever and working with your your personal board and someone like myself or yourself. Another thing that came back too was a pretty negative connotation on career coaches. A little bit of, well, if they were really good, they wouldn't be coaching, they'd be doing. And you know, as someone who keeps a very active consultancy to inform the career work, I'm okay with that. But I think that once I understood that, it made it easier to engineer conversations in marketing and how to go about it. Okay, there's going to be some reluctance here or concern, but actually, um, what what makes me happy is when you're working with someone, the sound I want to hear is, huh, that's interesting. Hadn't thought of that, right? And you're not going to get that solo. I mean, or maybe once in a while if you stay up late enough and drink enough coffee. But um, I think career work and job search are, of course, they require networking, but I think they also require some serious brainstorming. Someone
Mhm.
who can say to you, that's too timid, that's pretty bold. Are you sure you want to take that on? That's where we need each other, I think.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that. Were there any aha moments along the way on this journey
Um,
that you've been on
yeah,
past 5 years or
uh,
so?
there was in the sense that I used to be kind of impatient that the day consultancy was so busy and that this was a sideline. And then I realized somewhere in the last few years, I realized, wait a minute, you know, I get to bring what I'm learning about the labor market and skills and all kinds of stuff to the day practice. And you can't beat the experience of solving difficult client problems for advising people how to fit into the marketplace, the job marketplace. So my aha was, remember Dorothy clicked her heels, there's no place like home? I
Mhm.
sort of a recognition that says, you know what, this is actually a good idea. I wish I had intended it, but in the end, I think these two things support each other really well. Make sense?
It totally makes sense. Very similar to how I operate my business. Part of what I do is consulting, so I'm still doing hands-on work for clients, and that keeps me sharp. It's also rewarding, and I enjoy it. So, kind of directly solving problems, essentially doing what I've always done in my career, or did for most of my career, and then I'm also coaching businesses and executives. And so I think keeping your hands in both things is actually very relevant to how you explained it, because you're still in the game there. You still bring that experience of working and operating um, to being able to help your clients from a coaching perspective.
Well, our good luck that we're finding such alignment on a live podcast. Thank you, Jason. And there is something else too that you know you've been in business long enough to watch pendulums swing. You know, everything's got to be centralized. Yeah. And then you realize that, the accounting system I have for the beverage company and the medical instrumentation, wow, that doesn't really fit. And I worked with a Fortune maybe 250 company when I was with Deloitte that told me in the hallway one time, we have every mid-size accounting package in our divisions that you can buy.
Mhm.
So, like those kinds of continuums, you watch the pendulum swing. Well, I think one of the things that's happened to the workplace a number of years ago, everybody surfs. Here comes the gig economy. Then post COVID, you got a signing bonus at McDonald's. Um, and now here we are again. One of the articles, most recent article I've really focused on is a Wall Street Journal article with the title CEOs are proudly announcing workforce reductions, right? AI, I'm efficient, I'm a tiger, and we're killing it. I mean, one of the banks went from 300,000 people to 212. So I think
Yeah.
all that creates another dynamic, which is, come on, let's be crafty. Come on, I got some experience. I know what I'm doing. Let's brainstorm. Let's pull in whoever else we need. Let's network. Let's tweak those skills, and let's find you something.
Love it. That's great. That's awesome. What's been the most rewarding part of your journey so far?
I'm lucky enough to have this happen with job shadow grad students and clients, and like It's when the person realizes more is possible than they thought,
Mhm.
and that there are other ways of going about it. Like, I think all too often the idea of starting something or being that entrepreneur is a patent, a big investment of money, and an IPO. Okay, 0.001% of the profile fits that. For the rest of us, I think finding something that it's a really relevant offering that you could actually put out there, either by opening up your own shop or by going on Fiverr or Upwork, which is a great way, right? The freelance market, what a great way to test your offering and to see others who are doing something similar and understand what you might need to add. Is that all making sense? And that's why I love that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Is there anything you wish you had known before you had started in Plana, that maybe perhaps you would have done something different?
Well, I think that business of the marketing focus group, I mean, that was like stepping out of the ring,
Mhm.
stopping the fight, paying some money and getting the data that said, oh, okay, I see what the battle I'm in now. Um, and this idea that I should hire a trainer to get fit, but I should go it alone for my career. And when you understand that, you that's where I've been working with Steve Dubin and some really good marketing things. That come on, let's open up a conversation, and I feel pretty confident about what's been happening there. So I guess that's the biggest kind of insight or learning. The other one though was that this business of the incremental or the parallel, the side gig, there's nothing wrong with that. If you wake up tomorrow and you're willing to risk the mortgage and everything else, okay, be careful. Let's put that in a spreadsheet. Let's test the idea with someone who knows the sector. But it's not hard in today's world to try a new offering. Put your toe in the water, and it gives you, and it's a great way to create personal momentum. I think as you're thinking about that, if you're in something that you don't love, you're surviving. But if you start to have a glimmer of something that you think is really cool and you're working on it a little bit, I think that's a good. I think that's a good. I think that's psychologically healthy.
Awesome. That's great. What advice would you give other business owners or entrepreneurs just starting out, or perhaps those who might be struggling to grow their business?
Well, I think get advice. Networking. Don't ask. Steve Dubin and I do a professional networking seminar that's actually been approved by the Commonwealth for reimbursement. And one of the things that we've realized is don't do a big ask to anyone. Don't say, get me a job. Say, what should I be studying in this sector? What's emerging? Because that's doable. You know what I mean? So I think on you don't want to expect free consulting, and I think you should consider hiring some professional help like yourself for business advice in a sector. But I also think you want to do some networking about if you're that entrepreneur and you're struggling, is this standard fare? Do you need more marketing? Do you need that? So that's one thread I'd say. There's a few threads I'd say I wish I know, and I'll always tell an entrepreneur. So that first one is kind of intel. How do I know how I'm doing? Is this the normal struggle? Another one I do is whether it's advising people in their current roles or career, you really have to look at your time pie chart. Am I doing what I intended? And if you don't have intention, make them. But you really want to say, what should I be doing, and am I doing that?
Mhm.
Another thing I love is this whole idea of lean, the minimum viable product. Um, you know, that's a really good concept. What would a couple of friendlies buy next week, next month, or next quarter? I think that's, and I hope you'll agree. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. That's a key one to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in product development, being able to test the market with a minimal viable product is a great strategy. A lot of times we're, with a new customer that wants to test out the concept and do a pilot, an MVP is the way to go. I do think there's a word of caution though for very early stage businesses that I would throw out there. So if you do have that MVP, you have that initial concept of a product, um, you're going to get you're likely going to get some interest and support, right, from friendlies, right? So that's like friends and family, right? You have to be able to move beyond that. Okay. So that can create a false positive because you're going to get support from those people who are going to support you almost with anything that you do. You have to kind of get to that next level and really get true market validation. Will somebody who doesn't know you, you have built no trust with, buy your product? Okay. And if you can
I,
prove that part out, then you have something.
I love it. And you know what, Jason, we can write a paper on what it means to be a friendly. What I mean is an ex client when you were with the software house or whatever it was, who say, yeah, I would buy that. And then yes, beyond that, and that's a great example of where you want some advice is, how where do I bring this? How do I develop it? Now, if you're looking, one of the things I feel very comfortable about is helping people move to being a consultant, whether it's a offering around a specific skill or process or whatever. Because what you have to do is you have to change from doing that task or process to understanding it, how to assess what goes into it, and you know, being able to make a translation from doing it to describe understanding what you need to do it and describing whether it's being done right or not. That's the essence, I think, of consulting. So I love this stuff. I love this conversation, and that's really good advice. That once you get that minimum viable product and maybe even a sale or something, that's really where it's at. How do I scale? And that there's so many ways to, there's incubators, there's professional advisors like yourselves, but definitely one thing I believe in business, and I'm not a hockey player, but I love their shots on goal. It turns out that concept, you need 45 good shots on goal to get three and maybe win. And so, you definitely want to have this balance of urgency and patience. Urgency that says, I want to get out there with minimum viable product, and patience that says, okay, I know I'm going to have to try a little bit. The world isn't going to stop what they're doing because I have something, right? Those are the kind of the two dynamics to my view.
That's right. That's right. Sage advice. So what's next for you in Emplana, if anything? Are you looking at making any additional developments or any new service offerings or any exciting news that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, there is, and thank you, Jason. And I've been very careful. I've only done a few of these podcasts, but I've been, and I'm going to keep doing them, but with people who are as knowledgeable and committed as yourself. I did one a couple of weeks ago with someone who helps caregivers. And that was a wonderful challenge because here's someone under duress, advocacy in the medical community, this, that, and the other, right? I got to get power of attorney, maybe. And what I was able to work with this person and say, what could you do in 15 minutes a day that would make you feel like you're making progress? And so that I enjoy these things. Next thing I want to do is somewhere back there, working with my grad students, I roughed out a small book. And what the book does is it tells you it's a 5-day program that says on Monday, I'm going to get retrospective. I'm going to go through files, emails, and what I'm looking for there are contacts or, I used to do event planning or whatever. Just what are nuggets that you don't think of today that you're not doing today, but are part of you. And then you work through the week. The second day you start to say, well, wait a minute. Do I like those? Could I grow those? And then you start looking out on the job boards, Indeed, the Fiverr and Upwork, and say, is there appetite? So you can get where this is going. So when I go back and look at this book that we put together, it's time for a big update. I want to fill out the parts that talk to you about how to
Mhm.
go out. And it doesn't matter what the format is. It doesn't matter if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC. How do I become a consultant? One of the things I'm big on is seats around the table. What's that mean? Well, I think everyone in business is familiar with a public sector RFP. So if you tell me, hey, I've written RFPs for agencies 20 times, that's good. If you say, and I've developed a scoring mechanism, okay, great. But if you say, I have responded in proposals a bunch of times, and then you tell me further, I've scored those proposals. Oh, yeah, and I've delivered work against them. Those are four seats at the table. And the first time you can say, I've been around that, you now have a story in consulting. So I think, but I think that's a big insight for career because you might be looking at a job, two jobs, A and B. And A might be a little more money at what you're doing today, and B might give you a new seat at the table and is actually the more strategic thing to do.
That's excellent. That's awesome. So looking forward to that coming out. And last question for you, Mike. And so for anyone who wants to get in touch with you, connect or learn more about you and your business and what you do, including when this potential new book might come out, right? What's the best way for them to do that? Where should they go?
Well, just I send everybody to the website. Emplana Career has a nice little submit on planacareer.com. It's in my name blurb right here. Um, that has a great little submit form where you can tell a little bit about yourself. I'm in the process. You mentioned what's new and different. I'm setting up a series of free, um, just spaced out. Here's a calendar with a few freebies. One of the things, and maybe I'd be interested in your thoughts, Jason, too, like closing thoughts. Sometimes all you need is a chat with somebody who has some confidence and experience in this space, and you can feel like you're ready to go. On the other hand, you might say to yourself, you know what? I would actually like to have you and a grad student work on me for a few sessions and provide actual deliverables and the like. So we're in the process of setting those kinds of things up. So implanacareer.com will lead to all.
Very cool. That's awesome. So, Mike, thank you so much for being my guest and sharing your inspiring story and insights with us. Very, very inspirational. Um, and thank you for that. Thank you for the work that you do. I think it's really important, the way that you're helping people, and you're actually giving back through what you're doing. So, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Get On Point podcast on YouTube and connect with me on LinkedIn or at onpoint-advisors.com. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, get on point, unlock your growth potential, and transform your business.